farming, history and culture, public events, recreation, Delta food, and the arts. Tune into Delta Flows on KXVS, the voice of Stockton, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube at KXVS Radio.
This is Tom Patti, a San Joaquin County supervisor. Join us weekly for our local reality show. We talk about all things local, political, current, and real. Join us on KXVS, the voice of Stockton. Catch us at KXVS Radio or at thevoiceofstockton.org.
KXVS, the voice of Stockton, live. The voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, the voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
KXVS, the voice of Stockton. It's time for the Tom Patti Reality Show with your host, Tom Patti.
Thank you, Governor Don, as always, and welcome to all of our listeners. This is Supervisor Tom Patti, and this is our show on the Voice of Stockton, where we discuss everything local, political, current, and real. So, welcome everybody back in the studio here. Ted, you are here. Ted, I'm absolutely flabbergasted and amazed and impressed. So I clearly understand you have a girlfriend at this stage, because there's no, after last week, the way you dressed with that purple and striped tie, there was no chance the way you've dressed today, presenting yourself as well as you are, that you're doing this on your own, because you're not that accidental or lucky.
That would be correct. Yes.
So you've got somebody dressing you now.
You weren't the only person that didn't like that outfit from last week, but apparently Tony Yaden liked it. So, you know, I don't think I have.
He was being nice. Don, does this studio have a wardrobe department? Are you guys dressing? Do we have that in our budget?
No, he's coming in looking like that, sharp as a tack.
He did on his own.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'll be darned. Okay, well, Ted, congratulations. You stepped up. You're looking good.
We have two wonderful guests today, and I wanted to look my absolute best. I mean, how could I not look good for Dru Hunt?
Yeah, doesn't the saying go face for radio?
Yeah.
Well, we are.
What you wear counts too? I thought it was just how you look.
Well, we are broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube. I don't know if we told you that.
Boy.
You didn't read that waiver.
Just let me know when you want me to rap. I'm here to rap, right?
Oh,
yeah. We're gonna free form.
You and Governor Don are going to be doing
a Coke there, and no one offered me a Coke. Does that?
That's not in the budget.
That's on your second visit here?
Yeah, that's not in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, you got to earn a Coke.
Write that in, Governor. Let's get some soda pop budget going.
Yes, sir. Got you.
All right. So today is kind of an interesting day. I posted up on Facebook, but today's in boxing history. We've got Muhammad Ali, who, as many would consider one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. And so today is his birthday, as well as my mentor, my trainer, the very important and significant boxing figure, Cus D'Amato, who Ali and Cus were very good friends. They not only shared a birthday, but they shared, of course, an affinity for the sport of boxing. And not many people know this, but Ali had asked Cus to be his manager on several different occasions throughout his career. One of them, Cus was embroiled with a fight where he tackled the underworld that controlled the sport. The organization was called the IBC, International Boxing Club, and that's all they were, just an organization. And they controlled all the champions, they controlled the media, they controlled the fight venues and the TV networks. So if you ever wanted your fighter to fight for the title, you had to basically sign over a promotion contract to the IBC. And so you see, like, Jake LaMotta would hear, he had to take a dive, and this person, you had to basically belong to the organization. And it was a gambling run racket, and they decided who was going to be champion and who wasn't, who was going to get a title shot or not. So Patterson was managed by Cus and trained by him. And after winning the Olympics as a middleweight, Cus said, my fighter will be the youngest heavyweight champion in the sport of boxing. And he did. He became the youngest heavyweight champion, which then led to Cus very publicly going out and talking about the underworld that controlled the sport. And there was an obscure, speaking of radio stations that we're on, there was an obscure radio host that had a late night radio show, and Cus used to go on there, and he didn't name names, but he would always talk about this underworld that controlled the sport. Well, that broadcaster's name was Howard Cosell. And all of a sudden, that show became super popular because boxing was the big sport. NBA wasn't big. NFL wasn't big. There's no sport that rivaled. When you were heavyweight champion of the world, you were the sports icon of the world. So Cuss used that show with Cosell to get the message out and talk about it. Eventually led to the Kefauver hearings, which led to a lot of people going to jail, and the IBC disbanded. So in the middle of all that, Ali comes along, wins the Olympics, and says, "Mr. D'Amato, I'd like you to manage me." And Cuss says, "I'm sorry, I can't manage you. I'm very busy with the champion as it is, and I would be holding you back, knowing full well that there was too much going on." So what happens is, so Ali says, "But Mr. D'Amato, you understand, I borrowed my uncle's Buick, and I borrowed $20 of gas to drive all the way down. I drove all night just to see you." So Cuss reaches in his pocket, peels off $200 and says, "Young man, you'll have a very good career. I'll just be holding you back right now, but go ahead and get home." So Cuss, when I met Ali, he'd always talk about, Cuss took out $200 and gave me the $200 I needed to get home. And he always remembered he was so broke, and he wanted Cuss to be his manager. So later, throughout his career, he would constantly consult Cuss about how to fight and how to fight a certain fighter, and just about the sport and where to make money. Cuss pioneered pay-per-view. Cuss pioneered all of the TV rights that were overseas for the delayed broadcasts and such. So the fighters were making a lot of money, especially Patterson, more so than any other time in the history of boxing. So Cuss one time gets a phone call, and Ali says, "I want you to be my manager." He says, he goes, "I appreciate that." He goes, "I have a question for you. As a boxing manager, I'm an expert, and there's no better manager than me in the sport. I firmly believe that." He says, "But if I ask you, if I have as your manager a directive for you, and Elijah Muhammad has a directive for you, who will you listen to?" And Muhammad Ali says, "Well, I have to listen to my spiritual leader." Cuss says, "Well, that's why I can't be your manager." He goes, "I'll always be your friend. I'll always give you advice, but I can't be a manager if you're going to listen to somebody else that may have contradictory, issues, advice, or a different direction to go." So they were good friends, and I met Muhammad Ali on multiple occasions. He always talked very highly of Cuss, and they had a very strong affinity towards each other.
And today is their birthday. Would be their birthdays. So
it's kind of fun. A little bit of boxing history. So Dru, we've got Dru Hunt here in the audience, and we have a little connection mutually through Yaqui Lopez. We both started boxing here in Stockton. My career path brought me back to upstate New York, where Cuss was running his training camp. And you, as you were sharing a little bit ago, you went from Stockton over into the Oakland area and working out at King's Gym, which was a very well-known fight club and a lot of activity, which goes to indicate, if you're fighting in a club with a lot of activity, then that means that the activity is rather tough and is a pretty high standard. So you don't just walk in and walk out casually. There's a lot of challenges in a gym like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably fought quite a bit more than I did, but I've always been around the boxing gym, and Yaqui Lopez really is the connection right now, and I can't say enough about him in Fat City. I mean, what a legacy for Stockton in the past, and then also what he's doing now.
Yeah, phenomenal. Well, first off, no question, and undoubtedly, Yaqui Lopez was the light heavyweight champion of the world. He was robbed of that decision twice. Fought for the title 5 times, but he was robbed, flat out robbed. So he is an uncrowned champion. He is also the California State light heavyweight champion. So he's a champion in and out of the ring, and all that he gives to the boys selflessly, things that you help with at the local Fat City Boxing Club, is instrumental and helpful, and it really helps these kids that learn discipline. They learn to overcome a lot of hardships. They learn a lot of self-confidence. They overcome, as you know, Dru, that fear and that anxiety. First day getting in the ring sparring, the night before your first fight, all that anxiety that never truly goes away. You just learn and accept it, that it's natural, and you learn that those fears that you conquer they're building blocks in your life that you're capable of accomplishing much more than people that never really test themselves and never rise to that occasion, and they don't develop that character strength.
Yeah, I think part of what the gym does is it offers them a choice, something different. It seems like, and Stockton's not the only place, but Stockton's one of those towns where you're somewhat limited in what it is you can do, and the outside voices you have oftentimes aren't that great or that healthy. So to have this other choice, where what we like to say in the gym is you control your own destiny, and that hard work you put in is the success you get out. And I mean, that's true of life in general, but nowhere that I've ever been is it as connectable between the hard work and the success. I mean, you can see it's, and it's what Yaqui says all the time. It's, you know, he'd rather have a young man who works hard and is in shape than a young man who's got a lot of talent.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? And when I say young man, I include young girls. Or I guess young isn't the only age, but I mean, they're in there working hard.
Absolutely.
Girl, boy, old, young. You know, but it's just great to see the camaraderie and to see all the different kids from all the different areas come together, and then you begin to feel like you're a part of something bigger than just the individual. And you know, Yaqui takes them to all those amateur fights. And one great story I had, it broke my heart a little bit, but I was happy to be a part of it, was we were driving, we had a van, and there were, I'd say 8 or 9 fighters in there, and we were driving. We were on our way to Reno, and we got just outside of Sacramento, just north of Sacramento, and one of the kids said, "Hey, are we in Reno?" You know, I laughed a little. I said,
no clue.
You know, we're not quite to Reno. And they said, "Where are we?" And you know, I don't remember where we were, but one of those little gold rush towns just past Sacramento. And then the one boy looked at the other boy and said, "Man, this is as far as I've ever been. I thought we were in Reno too." And then I just looked around and I said, "Who's ever been this far?" And one kid in the whole bus raised his hand. And he had a dad who traveled quite a bit, so he'd been all over the place. So then I backed it up and said, "Well, who's in here has been to Sacramento?" None of them. Who's been to Lodi? Yeah. One kid. Who's never left Stockton? The rest of them.
The majority of them, yeah.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and I mean, they weren't, you know, they weren't 3, they were 13, 15. And it's just, that's the stuff that you can't measure, right? I mean, that's the stuff that having a program like that around gives these kids. And that's what I meant by another point of view is it lets them see the world is bigger than their block.
Very,
you know,
very true.
Or what their neighbor does.
Very true.
Or what their uncle tells them.
And Drew, let me just compliment, you know, anybody who gets involved in programs, and there's mentoring and there's coaching at, you know, in multitudes of sports. There is, you know, the opportunity to be a mentor, but you know, you look at like you at one point were a young man being trained by somebody, and you had an opportunity to grow, and now
Coach Rio.
Yeah, Coach Rio and Frank DeBalis ran the PAL. You know, he was one of my coaches for a while, and you know, did it. I mean, for what, 40, 50 years.
They're just as addicted.
But to the point, you really have to compliment, you know, and what you really may not realize is that in the future, that's the future generation that's teaching. That's the ones that are giving back because they had good experiences. I remember when I was a young fighter, I remember meeting an 8-year-old Arturo Gatti. And you know, talking with him and coaching him and doing a little bit up when he lived in Montreal, where you go there for fights and such. And
was he always a spark plug like that?
He was a good little kid. He was a great good little kid. Yeah,
what heart on that fighter.
And his brother-in-law, much older, was Davey Hilton, one of the Hilton fighting family out of Montreal, Canada. Every one of them were epic, great fighters.
Right.
And so you know, Arturo's became that next generation champion. Right. And I remember, and then, you know, 20 years later, I remember training with Julio Cesar Chavez's little 7 or 8 year old son. And then 20 years later, he's a champion. Yeah. You know, you see these cycles, and when you have that positive influence around them, and you're part of that, and you're that mentorship, that's where, you know, better things happen for people, is that local engagement.
Well, and the fight game's back in Stockton. I don't know if you've looked around, but we have...
Oh, we got 4 or 5 gyms, yeah.
Absolutely. We got that young Gabriel
Flores,
Jr.,
absolutely. He's got his career's on his way. Yeah.
Watch out. Youngest top rank, youngest pro they've ever signed, 16 years old.
Yep.
And there's some other good pros out of that gym. Fat City's got a lot of good boxers.
Which gym is Gabriel?
California. I think it's Flores. It's Flores.
They've got their own program going. Yeah, no, his father's very careful and has managed and trained him, you know, guided him throughout the amateurs.
Oh yeah,
to great success.
He's never that kid's been on the path from the beginning.
Yeah, no, he's focused. He's it's a story of hardship. I mean, his mother was killed by gunfire, and just a local tragedy. And he's able to channel his positive energy into a much better outcome for his community. And I've met the young man on several occasions. He's got a fantastic father. Right. He's got he's a wonderful young man. He's got good community support.
Well, they've come through Fat City through the years, so I've watched them get better and better and better because they've been, you know, sparring with our boys for years. And then, doesn't he fight right here at the, I think right here in town. I think
they've got
March
a fight
or
coming
April.
up. They're going to have a fight coming up when he's actually officially, I believe, 18, so he can fight in the state of California.
Oh, that's the issue. California
that was
have to
the
be
issue.
18. I see. I was wondering why we hadn't seen him here yet.
Yeah, so he's had, I think the idea was for him, he hooked up with a promoter that had a good plan for him out of, I believe, Fresno area or Bakersfield, I forgot. And so he's going to have several fights, maybe 5 or 6,
Right.
and then come here and start to build local.
And then do it here.
A local following here.
Well, and that's what I was saying about Stockton. It's we're a fight town that's always been a fight town. Fat City with the movie, the book, and then if you look in the early 1900s, the Bay Area was the place to fight.
Sure.
I mean, it wasn't the East Coast. It was right here. So it's
a lot of great
kind
fighters
of
came.
circle.
A lot of great fighters came here, fought out of here. If I remember correctly, Henry Armstrong fought here. There's just a lot of fights throughout history that have come through Stockton, and what you had is a great rivalry. Of course, you had Hispanic, and then you had Filipino farm workers.
Right.
So you always match your main events would be Filipino and Hispanic fighters battling it out, and so the crowd would be packed for exceptionally exciting fights. All great, proud fighters, and they fought their hearts out. So it's a great storied history here.
Well, and Yaqui talks about going out to the farm camps and promoting his fights out
Yeah.
there. Yeah, so that's that. When you say that, that rings true.
Yeah. Now, after that, you just to touch base on, you went into the Hollywood business for a while. You went down to Southern Cal.
Yeah, so I went to San Francisco State, which is why I was there training in Oakland, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do right away, but I've always been involved in the arts, and I liked theater and some of that stuff in high school. Maybe wasn't as focused on that, with the sports and some of that other stuff. It's kind of pick one or the other.
Sure.
I did kind of dabble in both, but.
So were you acting? Were you producing? What were you pursuing?
In Hollywood?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I went to film school, and, in my mind, I was going to be a director, and then when I got down there, they all decided I was going to be a production assistant. So
Okay. The first one up in the morning, the
get
last
the coffee.
one.
Yeah, go get the coffee.
The one that does all the work.
Where's my walkie-talkie?
Ted, you'd be a great PA. You'd be a fantastic
I'm a
production
PA
assistant.
on your show. We had a guest book today. Unfortunately, her 4-month-old granddaughter was experiencing flu-like symptoms, so that the young child went to hospital. So I had to actually rebook a guest or two, and I would like to thank you for coming on such short notice. But I would also like to say, before we hear about Hollywood, Julie Dameron Brown, who has a show here, is really excited about having you for a full hour real soon. And her show airs at 10 o'clock, Tales and Tips, and she is going to be reaching out to you as a guest. But we're happy to have you first, and we're happy to have you for part of our show, and to thank you so much for stepping in on such short notice. It's greatly appreciated.
She said something about having you as a guest. She was going to do a feature show on how to teach an old dog a new trick. So I don't know if she's thinking you're the old dog, or she's bringing an old dog. I'm not sure, but there's something about an old dog and a new trick. I just had Rotary lunch with Julie.
Right. She is a veterinarian, the best veterinarian.
Oh,
in
she's
Stockton,
outstanding.
And a wonderful pet column. But let's hear about Hollywood. You said you were a production assistant.
Yeah, well, I think that's where most people start down there. So I had a buddy in film school who was in Hollywood. His family was in Hollywood. So San Francisco is very much an independent town in general. I guess it's changing a little bit. But when I was there, and it was very focused on the artist and kind of that independent spirit. So a lot of the students who were there were not there for the Hollywood.
Sure.
They were there for the
arts of it.
The independent film, kind of do it your own way.
Sure.
How things looked, and those kind of smaller stories. But we had this one young man who was in the program who was always talking about Hollywood, and his father was in Hollywood. Well, I had always grew up watching Hollywood films, so to me it made perfect sense that the next step was Hollywood. So I started listening to him, and as we were getting ready to graduate, he said, well, my dad just moved to Marina Del Rey, and they have a house in Sherman Oaks area, and they got 3 or 4 months rent, and if you want to pack your stuff up and come down there and give it a shot, you can, 3 or 4 months rent free.
Marina Del Rey is not a bad place to live.
Well, we weren't there. Yeah, I didn't.
Sherman Oaks.
Yeah, they moved from Sherman Oaks, which isn't bad either, but they moved from Sherman Oaks to Marina Del Rey, right? And I said, absolutely. So, the first thing I did, and it's a story I've told through the years, was I went out and bought a $100 pair of shoes, these real fancy dress shoes, which I thought I needed.
Had to have.
I had $1,200, and I spent $100 of it on these shoes I thought I needed. So me and the shoes loaded up in the truck, and we went down there and It's actually a pretty funny story. I was staying with the family. Well, it was him and his sister, and they had a pool out back, and I didn't quite know what to do, or college doesn't teach you how to actually get a job, right? Imagine that. So I'm down there. I didn't know quite what to do, and get a resume together. Okay, got a resume together. Well, now there's this paper down there called The Variety, and another one called The Hollywood Reporter. And if you open it up, it tells you in there the different productions going on. So fax them your resume. So I'd get up in the morning and I put on my fancy clothes. I put those new $100 shoes on, and I drive 10 minutes to a little newsstand. They kind of have those newsstands still. I don't know if
they do
in LA. Yeah. And I grab the Variety and I grab the Hollywood Reporter, and I go back to the house and I fax all these things for about a half hour, and then I take everything off, get into my shorts, and go
poolside.
Go sit by the pool with my buddy's sister all day, every day. And that lasted a couple months, and then it turns out that this guy's dad, they started that show, Law and Order Special Victims Unit. And he became the showrunner, one of those Dick Wolf films, and he said, send in your resume. They always say it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sent in my resume, and then, I work. The rest is my Hollywood history, which, was, I think, 5 or 6 seasons on Law and Order, and I really wanted to get into production, so I left that and did a bunch of commercials and music videos and a couple movies.
Yeah, so you would get up. Obviously, it just depends on the call sheet, right? You would have to
the PA stuff. Yeah, well, the stuff. So when I was working on Law and Order, it's corporate life. I was working at Universal Studios.
A studio.
Yeah, have a little golf cart, and if you wanted to move this desk from there to there, you called the union movers, and they'd move the desk from here to there.
Right.
But it was fun. I worked with all the writers and the editors and the executive producers because it was all shot. It was New York, Law and Order Special Victims Unit. Then they added Criminal Intent kind of when I was leaving.
They had a spin-off where they were going to focus just on traffic enforcement, on parking enforcement.
No, get out of it. They have it. Well, the only reason I
Los
say
Angeles?
that,
Yeah.
they have one on there. They have a reality show. Yeah,
on parking enforcement, on meter
Parking
baits?
Wars or something.
Oh, it's the worst in LA. It is the worst for parking. I lived there for 10 years. I was in the entertainment business for 10 years.
San Francisco.
No, I lived in LA.
No, I know, but
New
you
York.
think LA is worse than San Francisco?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. San Francisco is difficult, a lot of restrictions, because San Francisco has less spaces available.
Well, and you got to move. At 6 a.m., they street clean this side, and then at 7 a.m., so you got to go move it from that side to that
That's
side.
the same in LA.
Yeah?
That's the same in LA. Just LA has more volume and more cars, so there's more opportunity for you to get a ticket. Whereas San Francisco doesn't have a lot of spaces, so you're not as prone to getting a ticket unless you're getting desperate and double parking or doing something obvious.
So is your story already known, or can I inquire as to...
Oh, you can ask. No,
what was your...
I'm one of these absolutely phenomenally masochistic people that loves a great challenge. So after boxing, I decided to leave that sport of boxing, and I just said, what next challenge did I find? And I just had to think about it. So I had 2 friends, Robert Downey Jr. and Anthony Michael Hall, were doing a movie called Johnny Be Good, and Anthony Michael Hall was
terrible movie.
Oh, it's horrible.
Oh no, it wasn't that bad.
No, God awful horrible.
Terrible movie.
God awful horrible. No, terrible. So so that was the distinction. But my first movie went to Texas and shot on location for 3 months.
So acting.
And had a good time. So I was an actor.
So were you in the Howard Fine studio?
No, I did Sandy Meisner's. I did a 2-year study with Sandy Meisner. Graduated with Joanne Barron.
I did Howard Fine.
Did you? Yeah. Those what I appreciate about Sandy Meisner is a 2-year study. You graduate, cut the umbilical cord, get out, and go to work. Yeah. A lot of the scene study classes and a lot of the teachers, you're there for 3, 4, 5, 6,
career.
8, 10 months or years.
Career.
I'm sorry, 10 years. You're going to the same acting school. Right. So I really appreciate it. I met with Sandy Meisner, and then he put me with some of his senior teachers in New York City, and again I graduated in Los Angeles. So it was a great experience. But I realized after, and knowing a tremendous amount of people in the business, I realized it's actually just dumb, blind, accidental luck. It just happens. There's no one way to do it. There's some ways that might help and increase.
The bars is a pretty gosh darn way.
I've run so many bars and clubs in LA.
It didn't work for you?
Or the people coming to the everybody's trying to get lucky.
Yeah.
See the difference. People would ask me, "What's the difference between as an actor? What's the difference between New York and LA?" Yeah. Because LA seems like the mecca, all the show and pilot season, and everything's out there. In Hollywood, it's all these big productions and the big studios. So you're gravitated out there thinking there's this big opportunity.
Right, industry.
Yeah, but you go out there and the weather's nice, and 1 year turns to 5, and then it'll say 8 years later, you're like, I'm really not doing much because the weather's so nice, and every day is another day. But the big difference is in New York, when a production would go to New York to cast, they're looking for an actor. In Los Angeles, they're looking for a look, a name, a height, a hair color, anything random. They're not looking for that talent. So not to say there aren't talented people, and there are many talented people, East Coast, West Coast, San Francisco, all around, many talented people. But the big difference is in New York, it's like this. If you want to march with the band, you better be dressed, ready, and on time, because if you're not, there's 30 people who step right over you to take that spot. In Los Angeles, everybody wakes up, and I'm telling you, I know producers, there's writers, there's directors, there's actors. They wake up thinking, today's going to be my lucky day. Yeah. Something's going to happen. Something's going to come my way. A story's going to walk in my door. Opportunity, I'm going to run into somebody somewhere. It's going to cast me in something. Right. Everybody's looking for somebody to do something for them. Well, not to say things aren't done.
I think people would be surprised to know how some of these really big names are still, the second a project's done, they're clamoring for their next one. I mean, you have to there's no guarantee.
Time.
You're constantly,
big time.
That's what kind of wore me out.
I was
constantly looking for my next project.
I did a movie over in Europe, but the biggest movie I did, I was the lead actor in a 10-hour miniseries called Oceano. Okay, it was Alberto Vasquez Figueroa, a big Spanish writer, wrote this trilogy, and so I was in it. I was cast me.
Google that.
Yeah, Oceano. So me, Senta Berger, Irene Pappas, Mario Adorf was a big German actor, and Ernest Borgnine.
Oh, yeah.
And then a couple of other people that were
Academy Award winner.
My brothers and sisters in the movie, Greg Thompson and another gal, beautiful young lady. I forgot her name at this point. But anyways, we did this movie. Mario Adorf was this phenomenal, great German actor. And if you looked up his resume right now, before that movie he did with me, he had probably 80 or 100 films. I'm not exaggerating. Let's just say 70 films.
Wow, right.
Then after Oceano, and he's kind of older, I looked at it a year ago, and he had another 120 films after me. And he was talking about doing a movie in Hollywood, and after Jim Hutton and Charlton Heston had just gotten cast in like Ben-Hur or something, right? And so they were all, he was celebrating. He had something. Everybody else was kicking rocks.
Right.
What are you doing? I don't know.
Right.
Well, talk to my agent. Well, I got an audition next week. They had nothing going on.
That's the writer,
Mario said back in Europe, he had 4 movies lined up right after he finished the one. It was one after another after another. Yeah. So it just, that business, I'm telling you, after 15 years of doing it, I realized what a fantastic hobby. Yeah. It's not justified
what a lot of
for
fun
what you put
that
into
was,
it.
right.
Great. Love it. Love the experience.
I had a lot of fun down there, too.
Wonderful. I really don't regret any of it, but it was
it's
just
an odd career.
If you want to move on in life, you want to get, if you want to have some assets and maybe a family and you need some security and stability, it's not that business. Yeah. So it was a great experience, but you move on.
Well, now you're back in Stockton and you have something called the Stockton. I'm with Stockton, so is Tom. We all are. So is the governor. The Art Lab. Tell us a little bit about the Art Lab.
The Art Lab. So this wraps right around with the whole thing, right? Because I've always been into the arts, enjoyed the arts, went down to Hollywood, pursued some of that, and I've always done a lot of painting and drawing, and that was really just about never putting my pencil down. When I was a little kid, I did it. I never really had any formal training, but I've always just really enjoyed it. And it goes kind of with the whole thing with the boxing gym and with the kids and wanting to. So I guess it actually goes a little further back. So I was in L.A. and it came to the point where essentially it was, it's time to above the line. You know that term.
Sure.
So in L.A. they talk about below the line, and all the producers and all them, they call them above the line. It has to do with the budget report, and there's a particular line, and everybody who's a producer goes above this line.
Right.
So the goal in Hollywood is to get above
the
this
line, so you make more money. Yeah.
So I was right at that cusp, and it was time to decide if I was going to come back to Law and Order for another season and go above the line. And I was talking to my father, hi Father, who I always go to and talk to about this stuff, and he said, well, look around and see if there's somebody out there and that you want to be, basically. Who do you want to be when you grow up? And I looked around, and all the successful men and women who were right in front of me, I started kind of dissecting them and their lives, and most of them were on their second, third marriage with a younger, good-looking, and had just moved into, because our show was now getting to the point where it was very successful.
Sure.
And they say that you can always tell in the parking lot if it's all Hondas and Toyotas, they're in their first 2 or 3 seasons, and then once it's all BMWs and Mercedes, then you know they're in syndication. They're somewhere in their 6th or 7th year. So we were all Audis and BMWs, and not those little Audi 6s, the Audi 8s, the real Audis, And so, and I looked around, and when I really got down to it, there was no one's career that I really wanted to emulate. And then I was looking at how it was a hustle, and how even while they're sitting there in these jobs, they're just nervous for what's next.
You're one phone call away from something happening, good or bad.
Some of the most successful, longest-running television in the history of the game, and still there's this constant revolving door, producers leaving, coming back. So, it came to that point, and it was like I had 2 things on my mind. One, I didn't really want to keep hustling, and 2, I'd always thought that I wanted to come back to Stockton and give back because, and this is something my mother had said, she said, all the good people leave, which I didn't quite understand. And then as I get older, I kind of get it, right? Because me and all my buddies in high school, all we wanted to do was leave Stockton. That's all we talked about.
Yeah.
Where are you going? But, anywhere, right? And that may be true of wherever you're from. But the point was a lot of the people who have the talent leave, and I think Stockton is left with a void or not as good because of that. So I wanted to make an effort to come back, and the kind of thing I was thinking in my mind was I wanted to create an environment that the 18-year-old me wanted when I was here, couldn't find, and that's why I left. So I said the 2 things I really was into was the fight game and the arts. So I decided that I needed a new career, so I went to law school here local, did that whole thing, became an attorney with the thought that that would be the anchor behind this idea that's now manifested itself into the art lab. So essentially I have my law office up in the mezzanine, and then I have the building, which is an amazing building.
Fantastic.
What a great local building. And I've known it my whole life, so I feel blessed to be in that building. It just, you can feel the energy and the spirits right when you walk in that place. And so my law office is in there, and then we have this big open space, and it's really the art lab. And now I speak directly to all of you listeners, because the art lab is right at the point where we're still trying to figure out what we are. We're still trying to determine what the community wants from us. So now's a really good time to contact me and tell me what it is that you want, what art you think the town needs. Open mics, opportunity to show your music, opportunity to show your artwork, whatever it is you may be after. But the 2 things that we have already established is we do a paint night once a week on Thursdays. That's from 6 to 8, $30. We provide all the art supplies and the instructor. And then on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., we do a free event for the kids. It's just like the Thursday night paint party.
Outstanding.
Yeah, but there's no fee. And
people are talking about that, Drew, big time. Oh, man, it's awesome. I'm going to bring my daughter soon. In fact, this weekend, I think I can bring her.
Great. Well, you got to get a little early, though.
I know.
I know. To the point where we have to. And the theory in my mind was Thursday pays for Saturday. I'm just looking for a wash.
Right. Sure.
So here I am on that. You ought to have a bucket there for donations. So because I don't want anything for anything. I know there's overhead, I know there's operating expense, there's paint supplies. I want to be able to say, hey, here's $20 in the bucket.
And I can appreciate that. So what I've decided to do, because people have been coming forward, is I'm going to make a list that has the link on Amazon. There's a plug, Amazon. Send me $100 in the mail on Amazon.
Well, I don't think they can do that. I think Amazon's struggling right now.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's clear. Amazon sent me $50 in the mail. We can work this out. And I'm going to have a sheet where it says exactly what it is we need.
Yeah.
And then to encourage people to order it and just have it delivered right to us.
I love it.
That way it's not this cash transaction, which I don't want to mess with. And I also don't want to put pressure on the people who can't.
Right.
I don't want that.
Right.
So
great idea.
Yeah. So I think that solves it. And I think we just put it there kind of nonchalantly. And if you want to pick it up and do it, great.
Or just have little tear sheets. People can take it and go home with it.
Yeah.
With that info. Like I'd love to be able to tear it off and then say, okay, I'm going home with it.
I think we'll just do a little flyer. We have an area where we kind of
But flyers to take. So, I want to take away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, because the idea is then you can go home and literally enter.
I love it.
The address. And it's the exact ones we use.
And that's what hours you do that on Saturday, Drew, as we wrap up?
10 a.m., 10 to 11:30 a.m.
The Art Lab.
The Art Lab, 2001 Pacific Avenue.
That's at the corner of Pacific and Bedford across from Cap Plastics.
I'm still learning that. Bedford.
Yeah, think of New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Bedford.
Yeah, just think of New Bedford, Bed
that
Springs.
Did not help me.
Okay, how about Bedford, New Hampshire?
How about Bedford Street, Stockton?
There you go. Pacific Avenue and Bedford Street in Stockton. Bedford Road and Pacific Avenue, across from Tap Plastics and across from Lisa Werlow's restaurant.
Werlow's sent $50 in the mail for that plug. I'm doing well today.
Well, you know what's great is you have a lot of industry, a lot of small little community businesses that are opening up. You have entrepreneurs, people that are visionaries that are working and opening up.
Watch out for the mile.
I'm
serious.
fantastic.
Watch
I
out
love
for
it.
the mile.
I love it. So you've got a lot of good people.
Everyone's
involved.
talking downtown. I'm talking the mile.
Now, before we wrap up your segment, you did mention that you're an attorney here, and that is your law office. Now, did you get credit from the law school for the time that you put in as on Law and Order, or did you have to?
No, but ironically, the majority of the writers for that show were
attorneys. Oh, sure,
and mostly New York because it's New York law. And state to state's a little different.
So, are you licensed in New York?
On television, I'm licensed in New York.
Okay, there you go. Well, we thank you so much for coming, and I would like to give out a quick shout out to Julie Damon Brown, who is very generous to allow you to come on our show first. But she is going to have a full show featuring you, where you're going to talk about the art lab and whatever it is that she chooses to talk about. Please tag her in our
I know there's a
Facebook.
literary project.
Yes, she is doing a number
of
activities that she is on top of. So I thank her.
Can I plug one other thing just for the mile?
Absolutely.
My understanding is going to be February 15th, and it's going to be right here at the Art Lab. And it is going to be a number of different vendors here on the Miracle Mile getting together at the Art Lab, and then there's going to be and there's more to come. It hasn't been all the way worked out. And then it's going to be come in, and it's going to be, we're going to sell tickets and try to raise money to do some new stuff for the mile. Because if you've been watching, these last couple of years, there's been some interesting, tough stuff happen to us.
There's some challenges, but you know what? You got a good organization. You got engaged business owners, and that's yesterday. That's enterprise.
That's yesterday's stuff.
That's enterprise, man.
Okay.
We're not into yesterday. We're into tomorrow.
Yeah, Absolutely. Drew, thanks for coming into our studio.
Drew. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Definitely.
I appreciate it. It's funny, Ted, as we're getting ready to have our next guest come in the studio real quick, but as Drew was talking about how the industry now, you're always having to hustle. I was in New York City. I'm on my way to Europe. I got a little layover there for a few days to catch up and see friends. And I'm having lunch with Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, John Lovitz, and myself. Now, I'm in pretty darn good company. I'm feeling good, right?
Sure.
I'm just got hired.
John Lovitz.
Yeah, exactly. John's a good friend of mine. Right. And so I'm hired. I'm getting ready to go to Europe and go for 6 months and shoot this 10-hour miniseries. And you know what's going on? Dustin Hoffman is sitting there talking about his agent, new headshot, his manager, not auditioning for something. Pacino got in a role. I'm just listening to these. He was really complaining about it. I'm like, it doesn't end. In that entertainment business, you're always beholden, and your last job can very well be your last job. It was really interesting to me.
It's an amazing industry. It really,
it's an act of attrition, and God bless anybody that becomes successful. So in our studio, walking in, we've got one of our very dominant and proud Stocktonians, Blair Hake. Thank you for coming in, buddy. I appreciate that you've come in to see us today and spend a little time in the studio. Tell us a little bit about yourself. So just get a little backstory, and then we're going to talk about a current issue.
Pleasure to be here. I'm been in Stockton since 1969. Moved here from Yuba City. Went to grammar school, St. Mary's, and been very involved in various things in the community. I have a boat, and I'm out on the water all the time. I'm on the board of directors, California Delta Chamber and Visitors Bureau, board of trustees for Humphreys College. Humphreys University.
Yep. My brother-in-law, Ron Guntert's on that.
Yes,
well.
And your last guest was a graduate of Humphreys
That's
University.
That's right, yeah. Drew was, yeah.
Yes, and also the treasurer for Stockton Host Lions Club. As many people know, I've kind of involved very much in those organizations.
Mm-hmm. And you also have a financial planning business.
And a financial planning business, Ameriprise Financial.
Right.
And which
now is that independent?
Correct.
You established this?
I own that franchise.
You own
correct.
That? Okay.
Yes.
How long have you been doing that?
And since 1999.
99?
Yeah.
Can I ask what the assets that you're managing, or is there any institutions or locally, or I don't want anything private?
Yeah, and that's it. I can't actually disclose any of that because if they choose to disclose it, that's fine.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, I appreciate all that you're doing. So I know that you've been very active lately and throughout the community. And I appreciate all the work on the Delta alone. Obviously, we have to fight the twin tunnels, and the Delta is constantly at risk.
There was a news story on that today. I don't know if you had a chance to
Yes.
read. Okay.
Yeah,
That's correct.
Yeah, there's sometimes with multiple agencies, one foot doesn't know what the other's doing, and there's some backroom shenanigans going on with meetings that shouldn't be happening, and then the governor's vowing to go forward with construction, but it might be one tunnel instead of two, and there's so many. Talk about disarray.
That's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's a whole other segment of a show. But most recently, there's a big uproar really throughout the community with Swenson's golf park and Van Buskirk as well.
Correct.
So the city, in fairness, the city looks at it and looks at their budget and the fiscal responsibility, and these are of course important issues for the city to manage, and so they were recently. Talking about and floating out the idea of shutting down one or both, or repurposing those parks. So it kind of sprung into action. Give me a little history of what's going on, and you've gotten very involved in a Save Swenson's movement.
That's correct. So this all came about December 2nd is when I found out about it, that there was an agenda for December 4th. City Council was going to have it, and they had a closed session. And on the closed session was 6048 Alexandria, which is Swenson. Purpose of closed session, I understand, was to give direction to the city manager on what to do with Swenson Park. And my understanding is probably to give them guidelines to sell it. And that was the first I became aware of that they were really seriously thinking of selling Swenson Park. And I was... in the process of putting on the Light a Boat Parade for the community, and I was trying to get people involved in that and sign-ups, and I'm putting another 1,000 lights on the boat and doing all that, and I get this message, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute here. Well, I start calling friends and say, hey, I need you down at City Hall at 4:30 on Monday, and they're all, I told them what it was for. They're like, oh, yeah, we'll be there, and I need you to call your friends, and I need you to call your friends, and people responded overwhelmingly. We had probably 250 people come down to City Hall on December 4th and talk about why Swenson Park was important to the community, to the future, like your daughter. That's what we're doing it for. It's not for me. It's for Stockton 50 years from now. That park was established in 1952.
Yeah.
It blows me away. It's been there for 60 years, and we're thinking of considering just on a whim, without getting true community involvement, we're thinking of letting it go. That's 220 acres right in the middle of your town. And we're already short on green space. We're around 3.5%. A typical city our size is about 9%. We should be adding more Swenson parks,
right?
Not taking away. We need more things for our kids to do, not less. This is big for the future of Stockton, and I'm tired of people saying, well, I want to go somewhere else. I want to get out of Stockton. No, I want to make Stockton a place you want to stay.
Sure.
And this is it. This is, if you're going to pave over this, yeah, fine. Everybody close up and let's get out of here. I'm not willing to do that. I want to stay here. I like it living here. Let's improve Swenson. Let's make it a gym. Let's make it a place for everybody in Stockton to go to. At the same time, let's make it financially not a drain on the city of Stockton. Mm-hmm. I think we can do that. I think we can do it pretty easily.
Well, and we had a big gathering. I say we very loosely. I showed up Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. My daughter's doing a golf program over there with about 50 or 60 other kids. And sure, lo and behold, I know it was out on social media to gather over at Swenson's Park. So all of a sudden, this gathering of hundreds and hundreds of people start coming in, talking about Swenson's, the affinity, and volunteering, and trying to get some momentum to speak up on behalf of Swenson's Park and saving it. And to the credit, Mayor came,
yeah,
and talked and addressed. And now, just for complete clarity, this is not my district as a supervisor, Kathy Miller. And as I mentioned there, when I stood up, I said, this is Supervisor Kathy Miller's district. She's engaged. This is her community. She actually lives within a stone's throw of that park. So, but it's a city issue. So correct. As a county, although there's unincorporated pockets around it, so there are county housing areas adjacent to the park, This is a city issue. It's a city-owned park. It's a city-run park. Supervisor Miller is aware. It's her district. So she's also engaged in whatever capacity and whatever is going on in her office. So I'm not interceding in that at all. No. But to the whole point I'm saying is I'm very proud that the mayor was there.
Yeah.
I'm proud of all the citizens, hundreds of citizens that stepped up to speak out on behalf of what they feel is important inside the community. I'm proud of your leadership on this, Blair.
Thank you.
Dion Dahlman stepped up, and he was a big, strong rally and a motivating force to getting people turned out. You don't turn down Dion when he starts speaking up for something. He's like, yeah, Dion, I'll be there, sure.
Let him talk.
So I'm really proud of the engagement, and that's really what we want. And the mayor even said that. I mean, gosh, you wish for any one singular event, you wish you'd have, forget about hundreds, you wish you had 50 people show up that represented an interest and spoke out. I've done town hall meetings and drainage issues in cities and in pockets of the county, and not one resident shows up. Yeah. Not one single out of 80 residents, not one shows up. And so, that being a separate issue, but so you love to see that kind of engagement. So that's what I'm most proud of. Is there was the mayor was there to listen. There were people and citizens of Stockton and people from the neighborhood that was there to gather and assemble and speak and be heard. And that's what government's supposed to be all about. Listening to the people, engaging as the mayor did.
It was a good exchange of ideas.
It was wonderful. Yes. And as I reiterated then, and I'll say now, is somewhere there's going to be a pathway to success. Somewhere there's going to be ideas that need to be uncovered, explored, and examined and maximized to its full potential to realize whatever success we can to save the interests of Stockton, the citizens, fiscal responsibility, and all of the concerns that we have. But I do agree, in a time where we want green belts and buffer zones, and we don't want Stockton to merge to Lodi.
This is a no-brainer.
So we want these green zones here. It's right in the middle, in the heart of the Stockton, the city area. That we want to be examining what else, other than housing. What else could we do?
The environmental aspects of Swenson Park, the species that are living there, many of which I had no idea until this came about. There's a lot of things about government I didn't understand until we started on this project 40 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
primarily dysfunction, but go ahead.
And that part of it is it's like we would like more information from our government, and that's not been forthcoming. That's been rather frustrating because I'm a numbers guy. I'd like to look at the numbers and see where we can improve in our revenue and take a look at our expenses, and we can work on this, but we need detailed numbers from the city. We have some long range ideas, but again, we need a commitment from the city saying, hey, we'll give you time to explore these ideas.
Sure.
We would like to do a 501c3 and partner with the city like Pixie Woods does. Mm-hmm. Go that route. Let's look at the contract we have. Can we improve that contract that we have with them to give them more incentive to make that golf course profitable?
Right.
I think we can do these things, but we need the city's help.
What do you think about Kemper Golf, who's been managing Swenson for the past 5 years? There's been some criticism that they have not done a particularly good job at it. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say they haven't because they're constrained by that contract. And that contract is not, there's no incentive for them to do anything but what they've been doing. And we need to rework that contract. Use Mickey Grove as an example. Mickey Grove is not a drain on the county, is it? Is that correct?
I would have to look at the budget.
Okay.
I know that the county does not run it as a golf course.
Right.
We sublet it out.
Right. So you get lease payments on it.
And the reality is, as was pointed in when you guys were talking, is parks don't generate income.
Right.
I mean, you look at any park. How many people go to a park?
There will be a subsidy.
In the course of a day, how many people of the thousands of residents that live around, you might get several dozen people going to the park at any given time. And wonderfully so when there's more and more and more. Great.
Right.
But you're not getting 1,000 people a day to park. You're not getting 500 people a day to park. You're getting, on a great day, maybe hundreds. So it is going to be subsidized. It's a quality of life. It's what your city might be known for. And it's what you're offering as a city to be an attractive enterprise for people to want to be in an environment.
And I think we can improve those revenues, especially at Swenson. I think with the closure of Lockford Springs, the closure of La Contenta, those golfers will migrate. Some of them will migrate over to Swenson. We were closed 16 weeks last year. I know that affected the revenues on Swenson. There's things we can do, but we got to look at those detailed financial numbers.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. That park's been around. That was Swenson's legacy. Obviously, Bert Swenson was our parks director for 36 years, responsible for Silver Lake Camp, most of the parks and pools you see in the greater Stockton community. It would be such a shame if on our watch it was paved over. I equate it to when the county back in '62 took down that beautiful courthouse building. I understand it was financial. I get all that.
Also, I found out about that?
What?
I spoke to somebody that was a judge over there. The bricks were falling down. They made the bricks out of a soft brick.
Oh, wow.
So people actually said one day a brick fell down and landed right next to me. It could have killed them.
Wow.
So you start to look at, something's antiquated.
Yes.
What would it take to take out the bricks, to rebuild it, to secure it? You'd be spending the millions of dollars. So aesthetically, yes, it's what a tragedy. But you're like, well, what was the actual utility, and what was the cost to keep it? So they had to make a decision. Now they put up a 1960s horrible looking replacement, which at the time was considered ultra modern, super cool, and the new way in the 20th century there. But
ugly as sin didn't come up in the description.
back in the 60s, it was thought of to be very cool, I'm sure.
Yes.
Very modern. So oftentimes you got to temper the sentimentality for that old courthouse.
Yes. And that is one of the things we're going to face on Swenson, and especially Van Buskirk, is that the infrastructure has not been maintained over the years, and that's not this city council's fault, but for the last, say, 10 years, the councils before them just haven't been doing the needed maintenance and infrastructure. Yeah. But looking at the infrastructure at Swenson, of the two parks, I think we can work with this one. I understand the mayor has plans for Van Buskirk, so I don't want to step on those. Mm-hmm. I hear soccer courts and things like that. That's great, and go for it, develop it. We've talked to the family this last Monday. Nice people.
The Van Buskirk family?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they wanted to continue. They live here in Lodi.
Okay.
They wanted to continue to be open space for recreation.
Oh, wonderful.
So we can work with them too. My primary goal right now is to make sure we don't sell this property, that we don't develop it, that we maintain the open space. We've talked to Disc Golf Association of America. They would like to see a course there, another revenue stream.
Sure.
There's things we can do, but we need the time.
Right.
And that's the big thing we need to get.
Someone mentioned more new car paths, perhaps.
Okay, so that's one of the issues we're looking at is that the cart paths. Okay, at Van Buskirk, they need to be replaced. My understanding is at Swenson, they're non-existent.
Right.
Yeah. No.
So we would. The figure we got for Van Buskirk was $9 million. Let me just tell you.
Right.
I don't know who put that figure together, but that's way off base.
Government contracts. I'm telling you, listen, government contracts, that you're going to jack the price up 30-40% automatically.
Or 2,000%.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could do that for much less if we have a little leeway and do that. But they should have cart paths, because anytime it rains, you have to pull the carts off, and they either got to walk it. We were out there the other day, and people were walking because they didn't want the carts on there.
And this is at Swenson.
At Swenson,
okay.
Correct.
Because someone had made that comment that Swenson does need cart paths.
Right.
That they're just not there.
Should
right
have been
now.
done.
Right, which wasn't done, but
20 years ago. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And what we need to see is whatever commitment the city's willing to consider, the city's willing to present options and solutions. Yeah. And so you've got private sector and the public that can come forward with ideas, but also what can some of our elected officials and representatives come forward with? Hey, this is our idea. What do you think about this? And how can we make something else work? So it's great to see multiple levels of interest and concern and engagement. And I look forward to whatever can happen that's going to be not only satisfactory but progressive and forward-looking.
Forward-thinking.
For what we need in preserving and maximizing.
Now, does your group have any upcoming events that you would like to share?
We're not yet. We're meeting tomorrow. We're going to have another to set up another meeting. Susan Loftus is going to have a town hall meeting, I understand, on the 29th. I don't know the location yet. She was looking for a forum large enough to have this. Meanwhile, we're moving forward on different things, like we're the 501c3.
Yes.
So we can solicit funds, so we can work on things with the park. We're going ahead with that. We're going to go ahead with a petition to permanently open space the Swenson. This takes lawyers, legal fees, legal documents, the description of open space and what it actually means. So we're working on all of these different angles right now.
Well, I will make a commitment right now that, Ted, you can go ahead and donate $10,000. I won't let it, don't let it impede in any capacity, but help maximize this potential and offset some of the fees.
Absolutely. You know, $10,000. It's. I know a lot of people who know me know that it's a small amount for me, but it's the symbol, and of course
it's significant.
It's
it's
meaningful. For the future generations.
Exactly.
The kids.
Exactly.
It's meaningful.
Yeah.
Your first extra $10,000. Go ahead and donate.
Absolutely.
Tom's grandkids.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm an older dad. I don't even know about the scene. I'm not sure if I'll be around for the grandkids part.
Right. Well, Blair, thank you so much for everything. And Tony Finnegan Manor is also behind Save. He's a big supporter of Save Swenson as well. He's a good friend of Tom and myself, and he actually recommended you to appear on the show to discuss Save Swenson and your efforts in support of the movement. So
pleasure to be here.
So when is that meeting with Susan Loftus?
29th.
29th.
Okay, and so I know it'll be posted somewhere soon.
Oh, yes. We'll have it on the Save Swenson Facebook
and you put
page.
together a contact list of the hundreds of people that showed up.
We have 438 people or something.
So my next question is, and maybe it's a good question with Susan Loftus a bit, but perhaps when you have a couple of ideas, you sit down with the mayor next, who's again very engaged, very interested, and just talk about the possibilities and all the potential that you guys are seeing, and that this group and organization is coming up with.
I hope so. All we want is time.
Yeah,
just some time so we can work on these different avenues for the future.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, I love it, Brett and Blair. And as just we are friends outside of the radio show, of course. As my guests, I appreciate having you here, and I just can't thank you and the citizens of Stockton. It's so impressive to engage against. Not my district.
I know
it's not my issue.
I do want to give credit to those people that it was overwhelming. Those that showed up, I thought 50 people.
Yeah,
this is not my forte. And when they kept coming in, it was 9:30, and our room was full. And I'm like, guys, we're gonna have to move this outside. Blown away.
You were originally going to meet inside.
Yeah, we were going to meet inside. I thought, we'll fit in this room, sure. And I'm looking around, going, we're not going to fit in this room.
And I'm thinking the whole time, this group better not be messing with my daughter's golf program Saturday morning. So I'm walking in like, I hope my daughter's registration. I got her for Saturday to do some golfing. I hope or Sunday. Yes. I hope her registration is not going to be interrupted here.
Oh, sorry. And I heard they were parked out on Alexandria and over at Lincoln High. And so we were totally overwhelmed. And the community, shout out to them.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, good credit and good engagement and good governance. You had Susan Loftus there. You had Christina Fugazi was there. You had the mayor. And it's not my district.
No, but
I wasn't there representing my district.
Ben Holt is a county road.
Yeah, it's not my district.
But as a county rep, Ben Holt's a county street. It's going to be impacted by this. Those that live there are going to be impacted. So we do want the county
as a citizen. Yeah, I'm there strictly as a citizen on that Sunday.
Carlos was there as a citizen.
Carlos Villaputo was there. Yeah, Carlos was there, and people that are interested in caring. Again, my daughter golfs there, and so this is part of her legacy, part of her
5
city.
high schools use that. Yeah, Swenson. Yeah, we have a nationally ranked junior golf program there.
Yes,
so it's huge. It really is for the kids too.
Yeah, no, thanks for stepping up on it, and it's. The question is, not what we're going to do. It's what we do that's going to be beneficial. Not not if we do something. It's what we're going to do that's going to be interesting and fun to watch.
Tom, any closing thoughts on today's show?
What haven't we touched base on?
We should have cancellations more often. This turned out to be a happy accident. Thank you, Blair, and thank you to Dru Hunt for coming.
I think we've gone pretty good in our schedule of time here, and I just always good to have you here, Ted, and I appreciate Blair, of course, and Dru Hunt coming in. The art lab is phenomenal. I'm looking forward to Saturday. I'm going to bring my daughter over to participate in this painting thing.
Outstanding. Great. All right.
Everybody have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.